Do you want the power of the gods? To be blessed by them? Well, you can in a game called Hades. In this game, you play as Zagreus, the son of Hades, the god of the underworld. Also, he's the son of Nyx, the goddess of the night. Typically, roguelikes don't even have stories. For Hades to have a narrative about challenging one's predetermined fate and escaping the underworld is a nice treat to see. Within these chambers, Zagreus encounters mythological creatures such as witches within the underworld. Lady Athena, she's the goddess of wisdom who offers defensive blessings such as Deflect, which can send back projectiles towards the enemy. The gods offer Zagreus their divine blessings and powers to guide him in his journey to escape the underworld. As the player continues their journey throughout the underworld, they're usually presented with
Each exit has its own reward.
This has a really satisfying combat. It feels really good to pin enemies against the wall and into traps, dealing bonus damage to them. After the player clears enough rooms, the player encounters a boss room. Inside this room, you encounter Meg Griffin. She's a formidable foe ready to slay the player. Despite my best efforts, ultimately I got defeated and got a death screen saying, "There is no escape," taunting me, and I wasn't so easily swayed. Once I awoke in the room and saw Hades, he looks quite intimidating, and he tells me, "I'm undeterred by that comment that Hades made and will continue my journey to escape the hellish landscape." Zagreus gracefully thanks Nyx for putting him and Athena into contact and helping him aid him. Nyx explains that the Olympian gods have a divine intervention when it comes to their relative. Within Zagreus' room, there's a magical mirror that accepts darkness tokens. If the player has been collecting darkness tokens, they can spend it on the magical mirror on upgrades such as backstab bonuses, extra dashes, and many more. I quite like the Infernal Arms as it's a place to purchase weapons, but also a place to practice your weapon skills. My personal favorite weapon is the Spear. It's a well-rounded weapon with both melee and range options. Poseidon introducing himself with a big splash gives the player a blessing that gives an invulnerability and big bursts of damage for a short period of time. With the aid of Poseidon's God Call, I was able to re-challenge Meg, and she didn't really get to see her defeat coming. After the defeat, you make your escape out of Tartarus, and I like the concept of slowly climbing up to escape. It's a symbolism of perseverance, and you enter Asphodel. It's filled with lava that can spew out and deal damage to players. It really captures that hellish landscape of Hades. Eventually, Zagreus makes his escape into Elysium. It's filled with green, a sign that it's filled with lively plants. This area is filled with unique enemies such as the Brightsword. When defeated, they respawn as a soul and try to rearm themselves. Assuming you made it this far into the Hades run before the final boss room, and if you did, I'm really proud of you, be prepared. In this room, you encounter Theseus. He presents himself as a hero, and also there's Minotaur. They are a dual boss. I quite like the theme of a unfair and unwinnable fight that the player has to overcome, and this is quite a run ender for me, as I failed many times because this is a quite almost impossible challenge to deal with. Despite me failing many times, my perseverance to escape the underworld wasn't deterred by my defeats. If you do not want to be spoiled for Hades, then use the chapter feature to skip ahead. I finally overcame the nearly unwinnable dual boss fight. I felt quite accomplished for defeating the dual boss room, and I pressed forward. Then ascending my escape. Then I was greeted by Hades. This is the final challenge presented towards the player, as Zagreus' father decides, fine, I'll do it myself. This boss fight encompasses the theme of impossibility with a full blast. This is one of the most difficult boss fights I ever endured, as there's very little room for any errors. My heart started pounding during the fight as I was exhilarated during the combat. And eventually, despite all odds against me, I overcame Hades the game and made my escape. I felt so accomplished by escaping and completing Zagreus' journey. Hades' narrative is built on the player's action and is also based off of failing, as it's necessary to fail and move forward. Even after the end screen, there is still more stories to tell, as you can still build relationships with the characters. I quite admire that Hades tells complex narratives through game mechanics. This allows for players to customize their linear narrative experiences, making it feel less narrative by being so. Overall narrative is about repetition, and there is a lot of that in this game, as you'll fail many times, and doing so can progress the story, which I really appreciate. You can personally see why Hades gets a lot of praise for putting a narrative within a roguelike, and it's quite compelling, and it's honestly one of the best narratives in the game that I experienced in a while.